Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the slight delay. Dr. Glickman reminded us we were talking too much. This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting, Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. or 6:31 at Frederick School. I need a call to order and a roll call, please.
Wheatman.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Braden.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
And Nash.
Present.
All right, that gives us a quorum again for tonight, and we will do the Pledge of Allegiance again. Okay, next for public comments tonight. Did we have anybody sign up? I don't think so. Okay, then our next part is the presentation, and the first one is the summer school report.
We didn't approve the agenda yet.
My apologies. I am like out of here. All right, so we are going to go back a little bit and approve the agenda. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda before I make any more mistakes?
So moved.
I'll second.
Miller.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Wheatman.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
And Nash.
Aye.
We're gonna have to get Sue like a buzzer to buzz me when I make a mistake. Okay, still no public comments. And I think the young gentleman is up at the podium to tell us about the summer school report.
Well, good evening. Thank you for allowing me a little bit of time here tonight to share a little bit about our past summer school work. So I'm going to share the information about all the different programs that we had. So obviously we're doing a summer school recap here today. I wanted to share that the entirety is about summer school, but it's broken up into these parts. So we're looking at Jumpstart Kindergarten. That was our newest program that we had. I'm going to go into more details, but that was the newest one that you heard this spring. We have a program called Adelante. We have Summer Bridge. We have Title I Summer School, and then Extended School Year. So my presentation will be about those main components of the summer school program. Before I begin, though, I wanted to share how that we were funding those. And so you've seen this chart before, that this chart is all about ESSER II. When we first got our ESSER II money, we knew that summer school was a good possibility and was highly recommended. So we allocated money as part of ESSER II funds. And then we heard a little bit more about ESSER III, ARP, and that was also, there was specific requirements for summer school in the ESSER ARP, and so we wanted to see how we could use those funds as well. And then, exciting, we have a new chart today. You haven't seen this one. This one is for gear. You heard us talking about the new grant that District 46 was contacted and told that we qualified for an additional $24,000 in order to provide a Jumpstart kindergarten program. And we were given 2 or 3 weeks notice, and maybe that was generous when I say 2 or 3 weeks notice to have something up and running. So we worked hard to get a summer school program, and so I made it look the same, that we had $24,000 allocated. We spent $24,000 already. So we're just in the process of finalizing that. We also used a little bit of money from the IDEA grant, and we also used a very small amount out of district funds as we were looking at all the different ways to provide summer school. When I talk about a little bit of funds, it was a little bit of funds from district. I wanted to share, though, that we're going to start with Jumpstart. So as I said, Jumpstart was somewhat of a surprise for us that we got notified that we were able to access $24,000 to support a Jumpstart kindergarten program. So that meant it was for students who were part of the Preschool for All program, either actively or on the waiting list. We went through and identified all of those students. We invited all of them that met the criteria for being part of Preschool for All, and we had a number of students participate. So when we look at this information, again, we had 46 students, 46 were invited and 22 participated. We're remembering that the Jumpstart program was very late notice for us, and we got it out to parents as quickly as possible. So the middle of July is not necessarily the best time to have a summer school program, in my opinion, but we still did have an experience with having that number of students. It was free tuition, free transportation. The bulk of our students took the bus, and so that was a good opportunity for them as well. This was completely funded except for a little bit for materials out of ESSER 2, but all of it was from the GEAR grant. And one of the things I think I mentioned at one of our previous school board meetings, this was a success. This was a very good experience for our incoming kindergarten students. This is something that I would actively like us to consider for more students, or at least these students again, to have an opportunity to have a Jumpstart kindergarten program in the future. You'll see that as a future consideration. The charts that I made, I also put in comments. So the comments that are in white text are from teachers. The comments from yellow were specifically from parents. I'm not going to read them all, but the kindergarten staff that we hired, the staff to teach the Jumpstart kindergarten, were very, very happy to have this opportunity. They really taught the students what it meant to be in school. And during the pandemic, this was important for all students to really go back to what it meant to be in school, but it was for for our early learners as well. And I will share that we were fortunate that we chose a really great resource. It was called Scholastic Lit Camp, that we used for all of the academic summer school programs, and we were able to quickly add the early childhood pre-kindergarten program. The teachers do love this resource, so that's been a highlight of this entire new summer school program, is some amazing new literature experiences. I love the one comment. Before the Jumpstart program, I was not confident that my child would be ready for kindergarten, but each day she comes home knowing a little more, I feel like she's ready for kindergarten now. So that's a pretty strong recommendation from a parent. And she had a great time getting ready for school. Getting her used to the bus was a great help. So we have to remember just those small things can make such a big difference when we're considering getting ready for school to start. So the specifics, it was July 19th to August 12th. We met 4 days a week. We had to have a minimum of 2.5 hours. Thankfully, we were at Prairieview, and we were able to use the kindergarten classrooms, which meant they had full access to the kindergarten playground right outside their doors. It was really an ideal, perfect location for a Jumpstart kindergarten program. The next program, and I'm going to have Dr. Diaz jump in if I miss anything, our next program was called Adelante, and that was for our students across the district who are either in the EL or bilingual program. You will see that their qualifications were exactly that. Anyone in K through 8 who was in the EL or the bilingual program, it was June 7th to July 1st, Monday through Thursday. And it was from 9 to noon here in this building. We paired Adelante with the Bridge program so that we could condense the bus routes. So we knew that the Bridge program and Adelante were pulling kids from all across the district, so it made sense to match those two programs together for busing purposes. So we thought that was really very helpful. We had over 400 students invited to the program. I'm just going to let that sink in. We had over 400 students who we invited to that program. We did have 83 students who were able to join us on site, and the Adelante program offered a remote option. We got feedback from many of our specifically bilingual classrooms. It was a good portion of our bilingual classrooms that parents were interested more in a remote program. So we had 38 kids who were part of the remote program as well. Again, free tuition, free transportation, a good number of students who took care of that. It was funded through Title III, it was funded through ESSER II, it was funded through ARP. We do need to think about the location as a consideration. While we loved having it matched with the bridge program for financial purposes, this building isn't necessarily suited easily for our kindergarten friends and our first grade friends. And so the desks were big and a little bit awkward at times. We made do. The other issue with this building is that there is not an active elementary playground. So it was hard for mass breaks outside without having an official playground, but the kids, as kids always do, they find things to be very well suited to being outside with some teacher directions and some extra resources that Frederick was able to let us borrow for outside recess. I didn't share, and I apologize for that, that Stephanie Tim was the director of the Jumpstart program, and Katie Reed was the director of the Adelante program, worked very, very closely with the other directors. So for Adelante, we got some feedback as well. The variety and cultural representation in the resources were a welcome change. I would love to use these books during the school year. So you're going to hear a theme that these were really great books. And I did have a number of Adelante teachers say, Paul, what would happen if some of these kind of got lost? Meaning they wanted to take them and use them in their classroom during the school year. That I knew then they were really good materials. And when they talk about the variety of and cultural representation, this is what we're looking for in a new literacy program. They were written by current authors of different ethnicities, from different nationalities, from different countries, from different perspectives, and also just having newer experiences for reading. So thankfully we were able to provide that with the funds that they provided to us for this. And then we did get some comments from teachers, issues with the building itself not being suited for younger kids, like the lack of playground and the classroom furniture. So I've already mentioned those. And then the last comment, it was a long day without a snack. And so because of mitigation requirements, we had chosen not to have food during summer school. And so it was a long day for some students. We did send home lunch and a breakfast for the next day as part of the summer school program during this time, but it was a long day for summer school for kids not to have a snack. So we would like to reconsider. We hope that in a future summer we won't have to be dealing with mitigation issues along the way. Our next program I want to talk about was Bridge. Our Bridge program, again, was housed here. We combined it with the Adelante for busing. It was those same days, June 7th to July 1st, 9 to noon. It was here. The qualifications were based on teacher feedback and school performance. So we looked for kids who may have struggled during the pandemic with engagement or about their academic performance. And so we had kind of a wide net of being able to invite, and again, we invited 310 students from across the district to participate. So we were planned and ready with materials for those kind of numbers, but we knew we would just be able to serve the ones that agreed. Out of it, we had 86 students attend. Again, it was free tuition, free transportation, no costs at all. We want to, some of the feedback that we got is, again, location, location, location. We loved it. There was big enough building. We could get all of the different, we used almost the entire building between those two programs. But again, it was difficult for our youngest students with desks. Those things are important. And then we also want to consider the math resources. I've been talking a lot about how great the literacy materials were. Our math materials were fine. We can probably do better over time. So we'll be looking at a different math resource as necessary, or helping teachers know how they can use them in a different way. So there's a balance in there as well. And then one of the things that we heard is from parents is that in summer school, We try to keep it light. It was a camp experience. Again, we used a literacy program called Lit Camp. So it was like going to camp every day. They had times where they pretended to sit around a campfire, socially distanced, of course. But it was a fun experience for the kids. One of the things we don't do in summer school is give a report card. And so that was one of the feedbacks, one of the areas of feedback that we got back from parents, is that we would like to have heard how students were doing. It's also very difficult because it's 16 days of instruction for a half day. So it goes very quickly, and the amount of time to do a report card would implement, would be difficult to implement. But I think we can think about ways to send home a newsletter every week, or giving a little bit more parent feedback along the way, specifically in this program. Stephanie Tim was the director for this program, and when she figured out this program really well, that's why she applied for when we had another position later in the summer. And Amanda Kerjeza was the other director. They split the role as the coordinator for Bridge. They actually are teammates in the same building and work extremely closely together. So it was a good match to be the shared leadership for Bridge. Here are some other comments. We liked the curriculum. We liked one of the things we also did was we continued to use the Driveline experience. So Driveline was our program for pickup procedures, and so that worked really nicely, especially in a building that the kids weren't necessarily familiar with. So Driveline was a great thing. And the last comment there, my daughter has come along much further with her reading since she started. So that's really a great boost for a student during summer school. Title I. Title I is a program that you've probably heard of for a number of years. We have historically had a program for our Avon students. This year we decided to include our Prairieview Title I students as well. So the eligible students were by teacher recommendation or by invited students from Prairieview and Avon. This program we kept at Avon School. And that because the busing was only going to be Avon and Prairieview neighborhood specific, we thought that made sense to continue to have them together. We had 142 students invited. We had 74 kids who attended our program at Avon. Free tuition, free transportation. The majority of the students took the bus. One of the recommendations for the future is potentially having the program, if it will continue with Avon Prairieview next year, to be at Prairieview. And so then that would also, because Avon and Prairieview are both our Title I schools, it would make maybe the kids from Prairieview a little bit more interested in coming if they knew the program was at their home school. And just to have kids see the other buildings is important too. Snacks, again, came up as one of the things we want to think about. And then COVID issues. We had a couple cases of COVID during the summer school program at Title, which caused the students not to be able to attend, and that was disappointing for everyone. Mrs. Hassel, who's a kindergarten teacher at Avon, was the coordinator for this program as well. One of the unique things about the Title program is because we had that funded greatly out of the Title I program as well. One of the things that we did differently is that all of the books that the students read during the summer school program, they were able to take home their copies of the books. And so they were able to take up to 20 different books home during the 4-week program. So we had an awful lot of excited students on the days that they were able to bring books home. So they typically did that once a week for the books that they had reviewed or they had practiced that week. And I was there on some of the days and they were, you mean I get to keep these? When do I have to bring them back? No, you mean I can keep them? And so they were excited and they said, my family's gonna love these, and it was very exciting. So those were not Those were part of the grant that we paid for out of Title I. And that also supported the Title I idea to bring more literature and more family engagement into their child's instruction. So we were happy about that. We will be replacing those books for next year, but we thought that was a great tool for our students who may not have many books at home to be able to have that for them. Again, there's comments about the books. This one was interesting because our title program had brought their lunches home. And the bags for some of the lunches, especially on a Thursday, because on a Thursday they brought home breakfast for Friday, lunch for Friday, breakfast for Saturday, lunch, and then on Sunday, and then breakfast for Monday. So the bag was fairly large, and I think sometimes it was actually 2 bags, or it was a half gallon of milk plus a bag. So it was a lot for some of our youngest students to manage, especially on Thursdays. So they were appreciative and happy for the food, and we were glad to be able to send food home with the students, but it was muscle building for them to be able to carry all that food. Again, they loved the books, loved the time to be able to be together. We also had a program called Extended School Year. Extended School Year is for our students who have an IEP that it's determined that there would be too much regression if they didn't have something over the summer. And so that's usually based on an IEP discussion that they get invited to Extended School Year. Was the same days, June 7th to July 1st, Monday through Friday, and it was also they had a couple different times going on. In the Monday through Friday and the interesting times, the 8 to 11:16, the state of Illinois has specific requirements about how many minutes and how many days and such, so we had to follow the requirements of the state for extended school year. Again, we had transportation available. They also had a number of students and staff members who were able to participate virtually. In extended school year, we need all the related services, and what I mean by that is social work and speech and language and resource, and so some of those staff were able to be at home by preference and service students, and some of them worked at school and then serviced the students remotely as well. So that we had 134 students invited, 119 students attended. The consideration is that it is very hard to run a dual program, and I think Yale had the same issue with extended school year, that whole idea that some kids were virtual and some were on site, and to balance that. It is a hope that we will be out of that for next summer and that it would be all in-person experiences for kids. Jen Fine and Melissa Indakulfer were our coordinators for that program. And when I say that, Amanda Woodruff, my colleague, and I were overseeing all of those programs, but they were there day to day, and they'd fill me in about any issues that were going on. Really, the feedback was more about they were happy to have kids on site and to continue to help support the program. Our ESY program historically has challenges filling staffing positions because they have so many needs of all these specialties. There aren't that many people who hold those specialties, and then they have to be interested in summer school. So they do hire some staff outside of the district, and that does complicate things with hiring and practices for 20 days of instruction. They have to go through the entire hiring process. But they find a way to find the staff to make all those things work. So when I put all that together, this is a tree map of all of the summer school experiences. That first one I showed you, that was called a brace map. Those are part of our instructional tools that we're working on, the instructional coaches and I are working on. But this is a visual way to represent all of the summer school components in one document. So we have some considerations. I'm making a suggestion, just putting it out there. We're looking at June 6th to June 30th as our potential dates for next school year. And that's if we end on time. I would really like us to consider broadening that Jumpstart kindergarten program to make that available for more students or all students. And I was doing research and that some other school districts do offer that, but they offer a tuition if that's necessary. But I would sure love us to consider helping our students transition into kindergarten along the way. We also want to continue to stack the buses. You may have noticed that the title program and the Bridge and Adelante program were at different times. So we use the same bus. So they would do that route and then do the next route. And then on the way home, they would take these kids home and the same bus would then take the other bus home. That helped keep our costs of bus much less. And so we do like combining the programs wherever we can with the students coming from the same areas. We thought that was a really good thing. You've heard me talk about snacks. That has to do with mitigation requirements. Consider an earlier registration process. Part of our challenge this year, especially for Jumpstart, is we only had a 2-week window to even get it up and running. We didn't have a lot of leeway, and many families had already identified summer vacations or other opportunities over the summer. So we'd like to get those dates and those invitations out much earlier. That would also help us with hiring practices. And then we have to continue to think about locations. Smaller desks, playgrounds are something that's important to us, but we also love having a big enough space in order for us to have lots of programs. I will say that summer school does impact, and I look to my operations and maintenance friend. I hope he's still my friend, but it does complicate about the cleaning and the waxing and the room setups and all of the major work in the schools because of the length of time that we're occupying school. So, that was my summer school recap of all things summer school. Dr. Diaz, did I miss anything? All right, I'm ready for questions.
Anybody have any
Thank
questions?
you, Mr. Lewis. Nice job on the recap. I feel like I've been there. All right, 2 things, and I'll start with the latter one first. I know you said that, the hope is that come summer 2022, we don't have to be in like a hybrid type setting. However, I would like for us to tease out any learnings that we got or feedback that we got from teachers so that we can leverage those learnings and be more proactive and have a readiness plan should the unfortunate come to bear.
Right.
So
I agree.
The first thing. And then the next thing is just in terms of staffing challenges. So you spoke to, and I can totally understand why ESY is more challenging because it sounds like it's a very niche and specific space. But just more broadly, in terms of staffing, what are our district sources? And maybe it's more suited for Mr. Wolk. But, where are we mining for talent? And are we positioned to consider expanding the scope of our sources?
So I'm going to start, and then I'm going to let my colleague fill in any gaps that I'm missing in all of that. Our first goal is we try to use our district staff. One, because of our district staff and we know them well. And then also because the hiring process. In order to go through hiring somebody from outside of the district, it is a lot of hoops to go for 16 days of employment. And so physicals and fingerprinting and transcripts and all of the processes that we would do if the person was being hired full-time is what we do for summer school. So it just adds a lot to their department. We do have a number of assistants who have a teaching degree or hope to be a teacher, and they apply for teachers, and so we give those as opportunities. We had a couple who were eventually hired as full classroom teachers for this school year. So I love that idea that it's a way to have some of our up-and-coming staff get an opportunity. And I was in the classroom, or the principals were in the classrooms, and were able to see. One of them was specifically a title at the Avon School, the principal saw the person in action, hired that person for the school year. So those are good opportunities. We also sent out some information to all of our current substitutes, and so we did have a small number, but we did have a number of our substitutes who also were hired into teaching or assistant positions for the summer. I'm not sure if I'm answering questions in there, but it was posted lots of places. And then Mr. Walk.
Yes, so I don't have the numbers, so I'm going to speak in general terms, is that almost, if not all, of our positions were filled by internal candidates for every program except the ESY program, and that's the specialized special ed program. With that, we have individuals who have worked in that program in previous years. So they may have worked in other school districts, but they've come and worked for us over the summers. They're former employees who may have gone someplace else and then come back because they want to do summer school closer to home. Or we may have to outsource to a private contractor for those specialized positions that everybody's struggling with, speech language path, school psychs, and those specialty items.
Okay.
And I do think our staffing would have been more challenging if all 400 of the students at EL had come and all 300 and already left my mind, 307 kids that we invited to Bridge program had attended. Mr. Lewis did make some phone calls to some staff saying, could you be considering summer school this year? And so we did some recruiting as well to fill those positions.
And you have to remember, last year, it was difficult year, so a lot of people were ready to take their summer vacation.
Sure.
Right.
Makes sense. All right. Thank you both.
Anybody else have any questions? Go ahead. Christy, go ahead.
Thank you. Not a question, just a comment. I love the idea of stacking buses for cost savings and wanted to know if there were, or just wanted to comment that it would be interesting to see if if we have the ability to use our trail system during the summer school, especially the 16 days, for any kind of walking school bus or biking to school or anything like that. So not asking a question, just a comment, and appreciate that you're always looking for cost savings. Thank you.
I just wanted to add a comment. I was thrilled to see summer school back in action across the board and thrilled to see those numbers for the extended school year. You know that that's always been near and dear to my family, so I was very, very happy to see so many participate and getting some of those high-risk kids back into the school. So just a word of thanks across the whole thing.
I will share that with all the coordinators who worked really hard about it. We did give some feedback from parents saying, we're going to take a break this year. I think my child needs a break, or we're not ready to be back in the school yet. So, and that was the same from staff. But we were happy that we had good numbers.
Well, I mean, it was such a huge impact, personally, that it's wonderful to see all of those programs back in swing.
Christy or Jason? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, next is the summer school projects report. Summer projects. I didn't say that. You're hearing things.
First off, I'd like to say thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. It's always a pleasure following you. I have to say, I'm going to comment on to something you stated about your 16 days. First off, you will always be my friend. Second off, that 16 days is a lifetime. It's a lifetime because in the summertime, we have approximately 54 days of work that we can work on the O&M side of it. So that 16 days is a quarter of our time, basically. So, not to worry though, we always try to plan around it, right? So as I stated, over the summertime, we have approximately 54 days worth of optimal work time, barring that we get out of school on time, no issues that come up, whatever the case may be. What you're going to hear today is a little bit of the projects that we did over the summertime. Not just outside from contractors, but also inside within our operations and maintenance department. Over at GMS, we had approximately 600 square feet of concrete replaced at the front entrance. It was breaking up underneath the front doors there. If anybody walked in, you would see it was crumbling away. Over years, salt that was thrown at the doors, sits there, the water, it gets underneath the concrete, kind of gets it to raise and lower, raise and lower. So it would get underneath that threshold, allowing water to infiltrate and also possible trip hazards. Along with the concrete that was replaced over there, you'll notice it goes out a little bit farther. I had 2 doors replaced. Both of those doors over there are receiving doors. Door number 14 is for the kitchen. That's a door that is used, if not 20 times a day, 30 times a day. People in and out, constant deliveries. Was rusting away at the bottom and off of the hinges. The other door that you see over there, that is our operations and maintenance door, where also we take deliveries in for the whole entire school district. GMS is also one of the 4 schools that you have heard about so far that has had the key card entrance put in. Off on door number 14, if you look to the right, you'll see a little, like a little black piece on it. That's actually the key card access that is being put in throughout the district-wide. Along with that, the key card access, it was an upgrade to our burglar alarm system throughout the district. Over at Avon School, we also had concrete work done in the front entrance. The concrete would heave over the wintertime. It was not pinned properly. So as the concrete would heave, the doors would not open, or they wouldn't close, depending on how you had to push it. We had to have the whole entire front ripped up and repinned to the actual foundation of the building. Along with that, the sidewalk from the school parking lot was sinking around the curb, causing that of a trip hazard. We had the sidewalk raised by a process called mud jacking. Anybody who's familiar with it or not, holes are drilled in the concrete, and they come in and they pump the concrete into it, allowing the sidewalks to raise, thus saving us money without having to rip up all the concrete and replace it. That was done all the way from north to south in the front of the building. Along with that, we had door number 4 was all completely rusted away. You'll see the double stoops over there. That was a single stoop, which was about 4 inches below door number 4. Now it's at level, so when you walk out, you walk right out onto that stoop there. At that roof there, the roof barely came over the whole entire stoop. Water would come over the side, allowing it to form on the concrete over the winter time, causing a slip and trip hazard for anybody who walked by it. We went ahead and we put heat trace up on the top of that roof there to allow it to melt all the water and the ice and go down through the drains. Avon was also one of the schools that has had the new furniture brought to it. I'm not sure that we have showed any pictures of any of the classrooms, but these here are the desks that were bought for the classrooms. Along with, Avon had all the classrooms painted inside, and that was done by our in-house staff. If we all remember, Meadowview is one of the roofs that was replaced this summer by Park, along with Park. Granted, we are still waiting on the material for Park, but starting immediately after school let out over the summer, The roof at Meadowview had a complete tear-off and replacement. In the process of it, there was a double underlayment put on before the almost 1 million square feet of shingles were laid down. We also had the gutter relined at the same time as the roof replacement. Meadowview is also another school to have keycard access installed along with the update of the burglar alarm system. Over at Prairieview, we had originally planned to have 4 slabs of concrete replaced up front. Due to some of the issues that we had to have a total of 6. In the back towards the front entrance, you can see 2 more slabs there. We had to have those replaced also. The parking lot, the west parking lot over at Prairieview was repaved a couple years back. We had that seal coated to try and save that parking lot from any damage down the line. Since it's a newer parking lot, try to keep that up and also restripe it. Our principal, Mr. Murray, asked if we can actually have it lettered for the buses there, so we gladly had it lettered so that all the buses know exactly where to go to. Prairieview is also another one of the schools that has the key card access and the updated burglar alarm system to it. Over at the district office, over the summertime, the inside was painted and updated along with the carpeting throughout. In our kitchen there, we had LVT laid down to get rid of the carpeting in the kitchen. And out in the front, deteriorating concrete was replaced on the ramp to correct a trip hazard. During the process of that, at the same time of fixing the ramp, over at Frederick, there were some slabs that had to be replaced right out front over here that were breaking up everywhere and causing that of a trip hazard. Along with that, Frederick here, we also had the burglar alarm upgrade and the key card access done here too. Over the summertime, we also had some training for our staff. One of the things we have to do is have safety training. So we bring in our insurance company, and they do trips and falls, pretty much anything we would like them to do. But trips and falls are one of the big ones that we have. I also had them do lifting, as that's a big part of our job, back issues, to try and prevent it. Along with that, we also had asbestos training this day too. Please keep in mind that these are just a handful of projects and/or jobs in the district during the summer. In this time, we had all of our inspections from bleachers and backboards, fire alarms, fire extinguishers, range hoods, HVAC equipment, preventative maintenance, backflow preventers, and more. All of these are necessary to ensure that our buildings stay safe and in compliance, not to mention any emergency fixes or problems that may have arisen. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
Just profound thanks to do that all in 40 days and to manage it and be a new employee to the district. It's impressive, and I'm sure anyone who's tripped will be glad to know that there are some anti-tripping improvements made too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jim, I have a question. I latched down to the word asbestos, I heard you say. We have 2 buildings that it seems to me would be old enough to have been around during the time of asbestos. Do we have any exposure with asbestos in the district?
Excuse me. The only asbestos that we really have, none to exposure to us, up in the ceiling over at Woodview, we do have a couple spots that are left in the older parts of the school. They are not in any way, shape, or form harmful to us. We have no access to them without opening up the ceilings and going to work on them. At some point in time down the line, if we're going to do work, look at abatement on it. Avon, we just got cleared as asbestos-free. That was sent into the state 3 weeks ago. Let's see, the district office had a tiny bit, actually in Mr. Wildman's fireplace. Please don't light any fires in there. GMS has some up above the ceiling, and there's probably a little bit more in the older pipes that are above the ceiling, but without really getting into them, we don't know. And I say that because there's so much going through the ceilings in tight spaces, and where we would see it the most is in the hard ceilings there. So without getting up and crawling through them. But per our consultants on it, Phoenix Consulting, and he inspects them every 6 months.
So the long and short of it is there is some in the district, but it's I don't know the right way to say it, but sealed and not, we don't think
Correct.
it's causing any environmental issue.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if I'm following along correctly, we're up to board reports. I'll start real quick. Just a reminder to everybody that tomorrow night at 6:30, we have the board self-evaluation meeting here at Frederick School. We'll be up in room 309, which is down that way. And that'll be with the ISAB. Also, if you notice, there is one less board member here tonight. Michelle Anderson has submitted her resignation from the board. Between two young kids, running two successful businesses, and being on the Chamber of Commerce board, she figured that she did not have the time to be able to dedicate towards serving on our board. So I'd like to just thank her for the time that she did put on the board and for her contributions during that time. Anybody else have anything?
I've got a quick, not really much of an update on legislative stuff. I sent out a note saying that there was going to be an EdRed survey coming. EdRed survey hasn't come yet. I followed up to see when that's going to come out, but gives us more time to think about what we'd like to say in the survey. So hopefully you've read the email, and when it comes, really encourage everyone to complete it so that, we're telling EdRed what we want them to represent us for or about in Springfield. And on that note, would like to invite anyone who can to join the luncheon, the virtual kickoff on Friday, and Sue can register you if you would like to be registered for that. And then secondly, just in terms of local lawmakers, I have a request into Senator Bush to see when she might want to come and address the board and have a dialogue. I haven't heard back yet, and I would not make a commitment until I found out what the rest of the agenda was, but hopefully we'll hear from her and we can get her into an upcoming meeting. So I will keep you updated on both of those as I hear.
Christy, Melinda, so I had a different board report too. At our last meeting, if you remember, we were talking about the ESSER funding and how we were going to allocate it, and then a question came up. It was a question in passing, but it piqued my interest, so I pursued an answer about how we might monitor our campuses, all our buildings' carbon footprint. And so I interviewed the sustainability director at Leopardo, which is an architecture firm, and then also attended a webinar put on by the USGBC, which is the United States Green Building Council, and found out about a tool called, well, several tools, but there are two that are free. One is designed by the EPA, and the other one that I really thought was interesting is ARC. And ARC is, as I said, it's free, and it could help us if we wanted to consider convening an advisory committee, a sustainability advisory committee for kids, where kids would advise the board, and engage with with the metrics around our building's emissions. So I liked it for 3 reasons. One, the first is that it might help us craft a narrative about our district's relationship to sustainability. And we've talked about narrative building for a while. So I thought that might be interesting because we could kind of connect the dots between the facilities plan and the budget and the place in which our students are going to school. So I thought that was interesting. It's also compatible with Energy Star, so we already have the data, and we could use that with kids. And most importantly, it would engage kids in local, in governance and in citizenship. So I thought that would be interesting. Again, not something we would ask the staff to do, so I'm not adding staff responsibilities, but definitely thought it might be a positive for us if we could engage kids in governance. So I guess I'm curious from the rest of you if you would like me to pursue the program, learning about it, which is called the Building Learners Program, with the intent of convening some sort of advisory committee that kids would be on, and they would again advise the board, so that we can figure out what our carbon footprint is and then work to reduce it.
Can you send the board the information so they can read up on it and so they have the ability to kind of make a educated opinion on what you're talking about?
Sure. I have a number of different things I could send. So do you want information on the Building Learners Program? Do you want information on ARC, or both?
You might as well do both.
Okay. So something to keep in mind, the cohort that's being formed, there are scholarships available for kids to participate. That cohort application is due October 31st. So if you are interested and want me to give you more information about it, it would be good to have that as soon as you can.
Okay.
Thanks.
Question just in the short term for Mrs. Miller. So thanks for pulling this research together. Sounds like a really awesome program, and I love the ability to connect the dots for our community, right? One of the things in short order I'm just curious about, because I know, we're putting a lot on the staff right now. We want to be very conscientious of that. Have we, or have you engaged just neighboring districts, or through your research identified other districts to just understand the commitments of the stakeholders and any teacher resources that may be involved, just because students are engaged in this?
So there's a school district in Lincoln. It's Lincoln School District, which I believe is in Nebraska, that has done it on a wide scale, a large scale. And so I can give you that information. And originally, I believe the program is set up in tandem with classrooms. So we would be taking it, not using it in tandem with classrooms, but using it in tandem with the board. So that, I don't have that information at my fingertips right now, but I didn't want to do a whole lot more until I knew whether the board as a whole was
It would
interested.
just be helpful just to have some context and understand the effectiveness or any unintended consequences or
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
blind spots.
You want me to look into that and send it with the email?
For me personally, so you send it to one, send it to all, so, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Is this something that would fit with community engagement as well?
I think it might. I need to find out more information, but again, if it was an advisory committee, no board member has to be on it, so I don't know if it would be directly tied. And they could come and identify ways that they themselves could help us reduce our school district's carbon footprint, again, in a way that doesn't require extra staff time.
I'm particularly interested in both that and the idea of the Kids Council, the Kids Advisory Committee, because this is something that I know we've talked about since I first joined the board, like having, some type of voice. We had talked as early when I first got on the board about possibly having a student representative on the board, but maybe this is a logical step in that direction, so I think it's important. I'll look forward to reading it because I think it would be an important thing for us to talk about.
Sure.
Okay, anybody else have any reports? Okay. Up to the superintendent.
Good evening. We'll be brief tonight because I know it's already getting late. So I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Lewis, who will talk with us about the first equity audit meeting that we had yesterday that was just fantastic.
So thank you for that. You've heard that it was coming. Well, it started. So we were really excited about it. I took a screenshot of one of the slides yesterday because I thought it was really powerful. So the purpose of an equity audit is to identify areas of strength and needed improvement with particular attention to historically marginalized groups. It is a fact-finding process that aids in the development of tangible recommendations to mitigate inequities. And the expected outcomes of the equity audit is the development of a strategic, accountable, measurable, and sustainable action plans through quantitative and qualitative data. And so last night we started that whole process. We looked at survey information, we looked at needs assessment, and we looked at questions that we're going to ask in our focus groups. We talked about focus group. It was a jam-packed 4 hours, and it went by in a blink. But we got a lot of great work done. So it's our first step. We have a long way to go, but it's really amazing.
Thank you. We're really excited about it. And I'm going to ask Mr. Woke to talk very briefly about our staff vaccination.
Thank you, Dr. Glickman. As some of you may or may not know, at the end of August, the governor issued an executive order for school personnel, Executive Order 2020-21, requiring all school personnel to be fully vaccinated or have a religious or medical exemption, and if they have that exemption, they're required to test weekly for COVID-19. I am, after numerous emails to our staff and our substitutes, collecting a lot of paperwork and a lot of cards, I wanted to share out that as of the other day, well, we have 609 staff and subs. 97.9% are fully or partially vaccinated, with 94.9% being fully vaccinated. And of our 609 full staff and subs, 2.1% qualified for a religious or medical exemption. And they will be testing weekly. They can either test on their own at a lab-based facility. It's not one of those COVID by next tests that you can take from Walgreens or CVS. So you have to have, it has to be a lab-based test, so you can go off and do it on your own. Or our shield testing that we have done weekly here at school does count. And so staff have been taking advantage of that. I think many of our staff here sitting at this table have already taken advantage of that as well.
Thank you, Thank you so much, and thank you for your efforts to get that all that information collected. So it's really appreciated. I wanted to mention, since Chris was talking about shield testing, Board, you may notice that Heather Lorenzo is not here this evening, and I wanted to share that she's not here tonight because I asked her not to come. That sounds very rude, but really, she didn't have anything specific on the board agenda, and we are continuing to work on getting our test to stay process in place with getting Binex Now tests from our Shield partner. And today learned about kind of the next step in that process, which required a 2-hour training module that she needed to do. And I asked her to stay home and do that training module so that we can continue moving forward with that process. So lots of people doing a lot of things to keep our schools open and safe for our students. And we're going to round up the superintendent's report with Mr. Wildman, who will talk about bus service and then food service.
Thank you. I'm going to start with transportation. Since our last update, we've made significant progress with Durham. We have daily conversations with Durham's management. They're ongoing. This is to maintain a high level of communication to keep our parents informed, as well as our athletic directors for after-school sports. We currently have 3 routes that were consolidated during the beginning of the school year. Our goal remains to restore these routes to the original schedule as Durham adds drivers. This will reduce the number of students on each bus and their travel times. As an applicant applying for their CDL, the entire training process takes 8 weeks. Durham has assured us they have a pipeline of applicants, so it will take several more weeks before we have all the drivers that we need. I'll talk about food service. Arbor is relying far less on temporary agency staff as they are approaching being fully staffed with 15 out of 19 positions fully filled, with several applicants in the pipeline, including those waiting for background checks. I also would like to report that we have a new food service director, Amber Donnelly. She started September 13th and is doing very well with the new training as part of the district. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Chris, and that concludes the superintendent's report tonight.
Okay, committee reports, the Community Engagement Committee.
Yes, I'm going to take this opportunity to brag a little bit about Mr. Mack. So as in review, when we first started the CEC, his idea, he conceptualized the idea of a dashboard. So volunteers would have a repository, a place where they could store their work so that it would build over time and be accessible to the public. So he conceived of that dashboard. Last year, he framed it up and created something that we can actually use on Google Sites. And then at our first meeting, not the community cafe, but our first regular meeting last night, he taught us how to use it. So definitely want to send kudos his way for that. It's especially effective because it's housed right in Google Sites. And thanks to Mr. Vipond, it's an account that's separate from any board members, so it hopefully will preserve some of the institutional knowledge of the volunteer work that goes on in our community. And then it's also replicable by other committee members. There's no additional costs. And when we step off the board at some point, someone steps back on, it will be available to that person or those people too. So thank you to Dr. Glickman for asking the principals to identify school leaders. We have a full house, which is really nice. And thank you to the principals as well. I hope you'll pass that on our behalf. And then also, for a while, Mark Tiplin has been trying to create a PTO that fuses Frederick and GMS so that parents engage over the same 4 years that they do in an elementary district or in an elementary school. And that seems to be moving forward this year as well. So some good stuff going on.
Anybody have anything else? Okay. Next is the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the addendum to the personnel report.
So moved.
Second.
Braden,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye. All right, next we are moving on to action items. First one is I need a motion to approve the fiscal year 2021-22 budget that was presented in the budget hearing earlier this evening. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Questions, comments? Nope.
Weedman,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
and LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay, next is a motion to approve a resolution for the transfer of funds from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund.
So moved?
Second.
Do you need to explain any further than what the memo said?
Nonetheless, does any questions from the board about the memo? I can completely explain it. The Illinois School Code provides for a transfer of funds from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund by resolution approved by the board. The next agenda item is regarding the 5 ITUs for the Grays Lake Middle School, and this will facilitate that procurement from capital projects.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
Okay, the next will be a motion to approve the purchase of 5 rooftop units at GMS, not to exceed 500,000. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay.
Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye. Next action item is a motion, I need a motion to approve the Arbor Management Contract Amendment as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any questions? No, okay.
Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Nash.
Nay.
Okay, next, we need a motion to approve the additional health clerk position.
So moved.
Second.
Do you want to explain?
I can talk about it. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. So this is the position that we are adding for this school year, or that we request to add for this school year, for the express purpose of supporting our school staffs and our families with contact tracing. As I have expressed to the board before, the time it takes for us to connect with families when there's been a positive COVID case is very, very significant. And so we are putting various structures in place to support that work, because it's work on top of the work that has already been in place. So this health clerk would be used flexibly in different buildings when there's a heavy load of contact tracing that needs to be done. This health clerk would also sub into buildings when when one of the health clerks is absent, as we don't currently have someone to do that, and then would also serve as a second set of hands as needed. And we would assess at the end of the year or later in the year whether this position would be ongoing. But I will point out that at this time, the cost of this position would be coming out of ESSER funds.
Okay, and this is, we built the staffing plan before with a couple of extra positions that weren't filled. Is this taking one of those positions?
That was not our intent, because that was we budgeted using district funds, we budgeted 3 additional teaching positions, actually. They weren't general staffing positions. This is a much lower cost position than a teaching position would be, and we are using ESSER funds to fund it.
Okay.
So that stated, we don't at this time have a reason to believe we're going to use all of the positions that we have, but teaching positions, but we'd like to keep them set aside if the board would allow that.
Gotcha. Any other questions? Okay, roll call.
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
All right, next is, I need a motion to approve the board policy updates that we discussed at the last meeting. As we stated before, the majority of them were legal reference updates.
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Weedman,
aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda are unfinished business. The item we have first to talk about is the long-range facilities plan.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm Mike Eichhorn from Wold Architects and Engineers, and we're going to be reviewing the long-range plan and the long-range plan assessment that's been completed. We also have Train Technologies, and we'll be introducing their work here as well. So tonight is really to give the overview of what's taken place over the summer as far as the assessments, what the findings are, and really to kind of give a big picture, to step back and understand what the true needs are of the district from a facility point of view, but also more specifically what needs to take place as a high priority over the next 1 to 3 years. And that includes a holistic, comprehensive, but also as well as the HVAC work. So again, I'm Mike Eichhorn, and here's Patrick.
Yep, we talked a couple weeks ago, Pat Henneberry, Train Technologies.
So you've got great buildings here in the district, and we want to make sure that they stay great and that they're sustainable. You have over 720,000 square feet of space, and we want to make sure that the buildings are adequate and in line with your strategic plan going forward. There's some beautiful pictures here that I got from Adam. A point to be made, though, is, and what's kind of unique about this time in the history of your buildings, is that they're all about, there's 6 of your 7 buildings are about the 20 or 20 plus year time frame. And that's usually the time when things starting to need to get replaced or fixed. So if you think about your house, you know, your roof, after 20 years, you're going to have to replace it. And so because we're at that time now, it's an opportune time to really plan for the future. And we're going to go through what that means exactly. So we took Wold Architects, we did an assessment in 2018, and took that data and we updated it this summer. Went through all the buildings again, top to bottom. Parallel to the activity, Patrick and his team from Train also were looking at the mechanical units and understanding what are the life cycles for the different components. So if you look at a mechanical fan, you know, when does the warranty end for that? Interior finishes, when did they start to wear out? And we also have a report. You've each received a copy of the detail of that. And in summary, the big picture is that over the next 10 years, there's $36.7 million worth of work. Of that, we prioritized that and brought it down so within the next 1 to 3 years, we're recommending, from a facility improvement point of view, it's $7.3 million. That includes roofs, interiors, pavement, doors, lighting. And then from a HVAC, indoor air quality, $8.4 million. In total, it's $15.7. So that's what we're recommending for the next 3 years. From the architectural, the priority list here, roofs at Avon, Frederick, Prairieview, and Woodview, and Adam showed one of the roofs that we did this last summer. So it's an example that now we're in this mode where after 20 years, we have to start looking at these things. And we don't want it all to hit the district all at once. So we want to be able to spread out that work and plan ahead and do it efficiently and not waste, you know, good money after bad. So paving also is high in the priority. Interior finishes, ceiling tiles, flooring, some of that can be done in-house. It doesn't necessarily need to all be done out of house, so we can be very efficient. Exterior envelope, things like tuck pointing, new windows, sealant, anything to keep water out of the building. We also, Train took a really close look at the indoor air quality.
I'll jump in here for this piece. And much of this you guys have already seen. We went through a lot of it a couple weeks back, but I do want to reiterate, regardless of the items that have been identified as, or even recommended as, something that should be paid attention to, your buildings are safe and functioning, but there's obviously some limitations to what you can do because of some mechanical equipment and building automation systems that reside in the district. So again, that causes the district to be unable to perform sophisticated indoor air quality measures and building automation system strategies. They're just older, and they can't do a lot of what you'd want them to do at this day and age. In addition to that, the equipment is beyond its ASHRAE life, so that's like the HVAC Bible. It offers perspective on equipment life cycles, and we've evaluated that and identified which pieces of equipment around the district are in need of replacement, or at least in need of that conversation to start budgeting for. And in addition to that, older equipment just can't do certain things. So that was also evaluated in our reports. But again, it all adds up to inefficient operation of equipment controls and then your exhaust systems. All those things tie together, and when they tie together well, then you're able to achieve a more robust indoor air quality system. There's too much manual operation. Equipment life expectancy can be impacted by that because of the way that the equipment operates. And there's also a limited ability to exhaust properly, or the way that we would recommend to do it in today's day and age. And again, just like Mike explained, we stack ranked the projects and identified, I guess, okay, here's projects that you might slot for year 1, year 2, year 3. And we line item that out here. First year projected investment, $3.2 million. Second year, $3.2 million. Third year, $1.9 million. And we still need to work, I guess, with each other and the district team, facilities team, to identify, I guess, what are the most priority items. But again, we also broke it down per school and then added it up here for you. And I do want to reiterate that there's ComEd incentives and energy savings that can be achieved by doing all of this work, and I've tried my best to outline what you could be looking at. The incentives are built on square footage and how many energy conservation measures we can implement per the prescriptive incentive plan as issued by ComEd. So this just gives you a general range. Obviously, we'd work for that top end, and if there's more that we can squeeze out of ComEd, we will. We have to get to that point, though, where we're really sitting down and getting into the project before we can tell you exactly what it would look like. And I broke it down. You have 3 schools with pneumatics. Again, that's very, very old technology. And then you have 4 schools with DDC technology, which is newer age, but still old. And then I do want to, make it a point of focus that anytime you upgrade building automation systems, you're looking at significant energy savings. I tried to give you a range here just to offer some perspective on it. Obviously, I can't get, very granular on it right now, but anytime from a scheduling standpoint alone, you're probably looking at a range from 5 to 15% of year-over-year energy savings, which is fairly significant if you add it up across all the schools. Equipment replacements will always achieve energy savings, but that's going to be really hard to showcase right now without having had the ability to really get into the project and what it might look like, and of course the way that the equipment needs to be selected, because obviously there's multiple different levels. There's super high efficiency, and then there's more stock related. It's just like, I guess, a car. You can get a car with nothing in it. You can get a car with a lot of stuff in it, right? And then same with the incentives. Any new piece of equipment will come with incentives. Well, I shouldn't say every single piece of equipment, but when we can get it, we will get it. We will outline it. It will be profiled. And then again, just to recap, I guess what we did, the indoor air quality assessments outlined, I guess, how the district can properly dilute, exhaust, contain, and clean the indoor air across the district with the existing systems that are in place. And then we also outlined what needs to be done in the event that your current infrastructure cannot properly accommodate. And I think it's another point of focus that every single school will have a plaque that's built. You guys will give it to you. You can put it wherever you so choose, but we also have decals that you can put around your building, just letting the community know that the district has engaged in, I guess, advanced measures to ensure proper indoor air quality, so on and so forth. And this is where I'm going to hand it back to Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. So that was a good overview of the needs and the priorities. Both of us are here to help. I mean, we're active in the district to help you prioritize the projects. And we're really at a critical point here. We've got the plan in place. We've got the timeline here. We know the cost over the next 10 years. Over the next 3 years, what's most important. And we want to keep the building sustainable. That's one of your mission statements, one of your strategic plan statements, is that we don't want to let the buildings go. We don't want to be in a sort of break it, fix it type of mentality or Band-Aid, because you don't get efficient use of your funds that way. You want to be able to plan ahead, look at projects in a comprehensive way, whether you dovetail the mechanical work with the architectural work, or you simply look at things maybe as a holistically across the district. You want to be efficient with how you use your money. And we're at a point now where we understand that this fall you're talking to underwriters about potential funding for the projects, and it really would align with doing projects, construction projects, over the next few years. We will work closer here in the next couple months, look at that priority list that I showed, and really drill down closer into, of that list, between all the administrators, Adam and Chris, what is most important and what can really be done in a feasible way with the funding that could be available.
It allows the district to be proactive in their approach over the next 1 to 3, 5 to 10 year range. So it allows you guys to figure out, okay, from a capital planning standpoint, this is a good place to put this project, so on and so forth. And it gives you the data and the information that you need to make informed decisions.
So the schedule is tight, but we are at a point where we have the data. Things are lining up well, and we're at a point here, the earliest construction or design next spring, but really, we're kind of looking for direction and some decisions at this point. So thank you very much. I don't know, Patrick, if you have something else you'd like to
No, I'm good.
summarize
I mean,
on.
let's open it for questions
Yeah.
in the event that you guys have any.
Does anybody have any questions besides where we're going to get the money? There's the $1 million question. Literally, that's when we come down to how to finance these or how to fund these for the most part. So that's probably going to be the big question for the finance committee and the guy sitting over there with the mask on. So. Christy, you have a question? No. Anybody?
But just a point of clarification for a moment, Mike, when you said looking for direction, you didn't actually mean tonight, right? You just, because when we think back to that last slide that talked about the work that we'll be doing between now and November.
Right.
I know that, the two of you and Adam and Chris and I, and probably some other folks too, will continue working on refining those priority lists so that when we do come to the board at the Finance Committee meeting in November to talk about how to fund some things, we can be even more specific about what we're looking to fund on a short term.
If anything, we just want to be resources. So whenever you need something, in the event that you guys have questions, concerns, or you want to know more about something or take a deeper dive into what this project can do for you, that's what we want to open ourselves up for. as you go about that process.
You know, can I just ask one question about the roofs? We've generated some good income, I think, from the solar panels. And I'm wondering if the roofs that you're proposing would be amenable to, if we did decide to put more solar panels on our buildings, is that a possibility? Or is there anything that anything we should know about the new roofs relative to solar panels?
Yeah, the roofs are being replaced and the solar panels can be placed on top of them. I think, much like we did at the GMS, it was done. So it'd be similar to that. There's nothing that would preclude it, but certainly there needs to be a lot of coordination. If there are solar panels, we want to meet with the contractor ahead of time, make sure it's compatible so that you don't have warranty issues on the roof.
I have two, not questions for the two of you to answer tonight, but just thoughts for us. The first is just, I'd like to see us be really clear and transparent about the criteria that we're using to prioritize. I think it would be great, as we continue discussions, to get those, actually agree on before we start prioritizing what are the criteria. And, make sure that we're following a really nice process so that when we go out to our community, we can tell them what was, the budget is a moral document, as Mr. Wildman quoted earlier. And so we want to go out with our spending requests in the same way. How does it align, right, with what's most important to us as a district? And then that sort of leads me to everything that we've been talking about so far, which is awesome, great data, and we've done all the really technical work to get, to what needs to be done. And I think the challenge for us is to now flip that into what does it mean for student well-being and what does it mean for our staff well-being. And so I think we're going to have to move beyond the technical recommendations and the dollar signs to say, how does this work improve student learning, create an environment to improve student learning, and how does this work help our staff feel safe and comfortable in their workplace? So I think, again, nothing that we need to answer tonight, and I'm sure Mr. Wildman's already, and Mr. I know the two of you, believe in both of those things very much, but I think there's going to be, Christy Miller mentioned a narrative earlier. There needs to be a really strong narrative about what is the investment that we're making and what is the impact that it's going to have on our students and our staff. So just as we're looking ahead, two things that are on my mind.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Okay, next we are up to new business. The first one is the D46 website refresh.
Good evening. I'm excited to share some information this evening about some work that has been taking place and will continue to happen in regards to our D46 website refresh. As a reminder, our strategic plan goal around communications, and we'll focus on a couple of specific parts of this goal in just a second. I want to take a minute and talk about some of our current website realities. And if you remember back to the spring during our strategic plan meetings, we had kind of the state of communications report, and many of these things were discussed at that time. We know that our current site was built in 2006 by one person and is still hand-coded to this day by one individual, Leslie, who is sitting behind me. Still, every single post that goes on that website is hand-coded in HTML. Every blurb, every update, and I heard a comment from Leslie this past week as Dr. Glickman sent out quite a rather long community update, and that was posted on our website, and we knew that our homepage was then going to be kind of long because of that. Sorry, Dr. Glickman. But that is one of the things that, in a few moments, that is one of the pieces of feedback that we've heard from our community that they really enjoy. They like those posts and those updates always right on that homepage and easy to find. So Some of our current realities there, I want to also note that our current website is hosted on internal servers. So if the power goes out at GMS, our entire website goes down and is not accessible to anybody across our community. Back on the strategic plan goal, the kind of the first part and the second, or the last part that I want to tease out there a little bit: review, expand, and clarify communication methods, and then establish a CCSD 46 brand that supports the mission, vision, and values of the district. Those are the areas, again, of specific focus this evening. So as we continue talking, we wanted to make sure that this work was forward-thinking. We know that the current site has served our community and our district very well over the years, but we also know that they're based on feedback from the community, from the strategic plan group, that it is time to look towards new opportunities and new ways that we can continue to serve our community. We also know that there are some limitations based on that site that is hand-coded by one individual every time an update needs to happen to the site. So some areas of focus as we continue to look at a new website platform for the district. And there are a bunch here. I'm not going to go into each of them in detail, but unless there are specific questions on any of those. But you can see the ability to have multiple users edit or update the site. That's something you've heard me talk about already a couple of times. So that would be a huge upgrade for the district. And then hosting it off-site, having a visually engaging site, making sure that it is ADA compliant and that all of our users and community members could access the site. Support for multiple languages, and that's a big one, not just through a Google Translate button, but making sure that we have the ability to put Spanish, our primary, secondary language in the district, and true translations on the site. Flexible, customizable, and then one of the other items that came out of the strategic plan discussions was having a dashboard on the district site for key information and key metrics. And I think that kind of came out in a couple different ways. Finance specific, and then overall key metrics for the district. So some of those areas, and then branding and logo design and support is something else that Leslie and I talked about throughout this entire process, and making sure that we continue to, and go back to that second line of the strategic plan communications goal, in establishing a CCSD 46 brand that supports the mission, vision, and values of the district. So as we began the website vendor search, this was truly a team effort. Leslie and I started way back in April or May and began having interviews with a total of 6 website vendors. And we met with them, interviewed, kind of saw what they could offer to us, and through that process, we also sought feedback from neighboring districts who have recently gone through this entire process. We created the list of our priorities, which you saw a few moments ago, and we then had a follow-up meeting or meetings with a couple of those vendors, and we were able to narrow it down to top 2 website vendor choices. And then we took that a little bit farther, and Leslie, with just one little email blast to some of her colleagues in neighboring districts, was able to do some reference checks and get some really good feedback from neighboring districts who have gone through this process. So with that feedback, we were able to then reconvene just a few weeks ago, the subcommittee, the communications subcommittee, from the strategic planning process. And we were able to gather some really valuable feedback that evening. Christy Braden, thank you for joining us that evening as well. And we were happy to kind of go through some of these very same slides that you're seeing tonight, and ultimately share our recommendation that evening, and again, gather feedback from that group. The top two, you heard me mention, the top 2 vendors that we narrowed it down to are Final Site and then Schools by Floodlight. And each of those top 2 vendors are able to check the boxes on these things that you saw were areas of focus for us as we embarked on this process, making sure that it's visually engaging, seamless integration with G Suite, which is heavily used across the district, ADA compliance, flexible page design, the news section, and a robust staff directory on the site. Ultimately, I want to share that we landed on our final recommendation being schools by floodlight. And there's a couple of reasons that I want to point out here on why schools by floodlight stood out above final site. The first one there in the top bullet point, completely custom website. With Final Site, we would be getting one of their themes, and we could customize different color aspects in some different areas. But with Schools by Floodlight, we would be getting a completely custom-built website for us to our choosing. So a lot of design meetings and a lot of discussions and planning with the vendor and the design team from Schools by Floodlight. But again, it is completely custom-built specifically for us. It hits all of those middle things. And then I want to go to the second from the bottom, school mascot and logo design process. Schools by Floodlight offers that to us. Final Site did not. So that would be part of this process where it really is a nice combination to have the group that is working on building our website and designing our website is also helping with the overall branding and visuals and design process of our school logos, our district logo, and really tying those two together to make sure that it is a cohesive process. And we've talked about that process briefly at strategic plan back in the spring, as well as in the months since then. On that process with Schools by Floodlight can be however we want that to be. We can certainly have student and board and staff input in that process, and making sure, again, that all our community has a say in it. It's not just turning it over to them and they tell us what our mascots and our logo should be. And then that bottom one, and you'll see in just a minute a couple examples of this, but we truly believe that Schools by Floodlight will be an ongoing strategic partner for our district. That is one of the things and one of the biggest things that makes them stand out above any of the other companies that we have talked to when it comes to our website design. I've pulled out just a couple of quotes here and a couple of references that have come from local districts. I'll give you just a second to glance at those. And you can see everything from created the site in 2020, or we've been working with them since 2017, and just the ongoing level of support that Schools by Floodlight provides. They are a local-ish, they're in the suburbs, I believe Elgin, but I got it wrong the last time I said it. Thank you. They're in Elgin. They're a very small company. There's, I believe, only 6 of them. So when we have an issue, we have technical support that is needed, something late in the evening or after hours, we call Joe at Schools by Floodlight, and Joe answers the phone. We're not submitting a help desk ticket and waiting and hoping that we get an answer from somebody who has never seen our site before or doesn't know the things that we've been working with them on before. So that level of support you can see echoed in these comments, and is, again, something that we are really excited and hopeful to have in, like I said, a strategic partner going forward. The communications subcommittee that I mentioned from a few weeks ago, some of the feedback that they shared, they certainly, and I mentioned it earlier, shared feedback about our current site that they really enjoy and that makes things easy and facilitates that communication that we know and that we're striving for. And then they shared some feedback about some of the sites that Schools by Floodlight offers and some of the things that they would like to see in our future site, such as being mobile friendly. There are a couple different fancy tools where you can keep on scrolling and the main menu scrolls with you. Ticker tape or specific call outs for important announcements, and then news stories and messages that are easy to find. Here are a couple of the sites and local districts that are using Schools by Floodlight currently. And I think Brandon's going to go ahead and click on Aptekistick Trip for us. And you can see right away that it is visually engaging with that full page image. To start, you see the menu bar at the top again remains visible. You see the logos and the news stories as you scroll. The social media integration. And just, again, there's just a quick sample of one of the sites that Schools by Floodlight has done. And that was one of the favorites from our subcommittee also. So I wanted to make sure we shared that. So if we talk about the financial investment, it makes sense to us that when embarking on a website vendor project, that this is not an annual contract, that we're not looking to do this entire process every year or even every 2 years. So committing to a 5-year contract with a website vendor makes sense. Really, again, building that strategic long-term partner and investing in this, doing it the right way, and making sure that it meets the needs of our community over those entire 5 years. And they're flexible on the payment schedule, so you can see that bottom line there of an annual payment that has, again, already been budgeted for this fiscal year, and then continuing with that payment for each of the next 4 years. Our hope is that, and I say hope as I go to the scope slide, this is a long process, and a roughly 8-month process to go from nothing to building and designing, and then migrating all of our content, all of our data to the new site, and then preparing for launch. And of course, training and PD along the way. The mascot and logo design process, I say intensive process with Leslie working closely on the design and layout, and then content migration and creation. It is the hope that we will continue to discuss tonight, answer any questions, and then potentially bring this back to the board next meeting for action so that we could get started and hopefully make that launch timeline of next summer. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you for that overview, Mr. Vipon. I have a few questions. So when you were saying customization, and while that's a great thing, the only thing I could hear was dollar signs, right? And so at the initial start, I think 110K was referenced for this 5-year deal. How much of that falls off after the initial launch, right? So how much of, I know upfront there's a lot of customization, so costs associated with it, but what type of drop-off can we expect or should we expect? So that's my first question. That's
a good question. As with any website vendor that we talk to, the upfront cost is certainly more than the ongoing cost. For Floodlight specific, or Schools by Floodlight specifically, it is down closer to $5,000 mark after we kind of take this upfront creation and launch process. And so then the annual of them hosting it and the annual maintenance is significantly less.
Okay. And so to that point of them hosting and overseeing the maintenance, what type of return would we expect to see in our FTE? Said differently, Leslie's capacity as a result of that being now kind of offshore, for lack of a better word. Sure.
Can I help with this one?
Yes.
We have so many needs in our school district regarding communication. So it's really about being able to use Leslie's talents in a different way, so that she's not always the person sitting there hand coding information in. So
That's helpful.
Chris, if you want to add anything on to that?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so more of a redeployment of our current
Yes,
FTE. Okay.
correct.
All right, and then, thank you for that, Dr. Bush.
Sure.
And then my last question is just around progressiveness. So, I don't know any other way to say this, but this example that was given to me one time when I was building out a process, and it was, Tamika, we don't need the Cadillac version, right? Is there, through Schools by Floodlight, a way to potentially kind of come in a little less, right, but with the long-term plan to continue to kind of become more comprehensive and robust over time, but kind of start out with iterations that were better than where we are, and kind of like a step level process to kind of get to the Cadillac, if you will?
Yes, good question, and I'll answer it shortly by saying somewhat. One of the discussions that we had with Joe from Schools by Floodlight was options for doing just what you're talking about and saving some of that upfront money. And one of the things that he mentioned was, depending on our level of involvement in the design process up front. We're fortunate, and we know this because we just talked about it. Leslie has a great deal of design and coding experience. So depending on how much time and energy we and Leslie are able to devote to that upfront design, there could be some cost savings that come back from there. As far as the build on the ongoing process and kind of start with a base and keep adding on, that would be a question that I can follow up with Joe on and get back to. But in general, I think their design process, they want to make sure that they're giving us an end product that to them is high quality and will lead us long term. So we'll be able to kind of design that scope a little bit more as we get going in the process.
Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, do I remember correctly that the 110,000 over 5 years also included kind of a set-aside amount that was for logo development? Or is that correct?
Yes. So another area of cost savings that we talked to Joe about was the logo and mascot design process. That savings, if we take that out of the project completely, would be about $10,000, which it could go either way, right? I mentioned how I feel relatively strongly on that piece and having those two tied together and making sure that the design or the logo and mascots are designed in a way that's cohesive with the website and just makes sense. We have had some internal discussions on that, specifically on could we save money doing it elsewhere or going to a third-party graphic designer to do that work for us. Potentially, it could also potentially complicate things significantly and not actually save that much money in the long run. And we've talked about it. One of the reasons why that piece is so important to the graphics and the branding individual in Leslie behind me and then myself is that right now in most cases our school's mascot for spirit wear for any swag each year just kind of changes depending on who's placing the order and what vendor we might be using. So as we can think through that, we know that doesn't really help our district or school branding very much. So we want to make sure that every time we see a certain mascot, we know that that's District 46. Every time we see our district logo, that's really helping meet that portion of that communications goal and making sure that we're adding to that branding. So again, we feel strongly about it, but it's a cost savings.
Chris, I'm just curious if you could tell us more, maybe not tonight, because I haven't, I didn't give you a heads up that I was going to ask about this, but I'm wondering if there's a way to integrate volunteer work with the dashboard, something, I don't know what that would look like, but the Community Engagement Committee has created this dashboard. I'm wondering if there's a way to integrate it into the district website. So again, don't need an answer right now. I'm just...
And that's one of the things that I will touch on it just briefly. One of the things that we're looking for is the ability to have multiple editors and users on the site. So there very well could be the possibility that we have the site that you have created could live on the district site and you have added access to just that specific page on the site. We'll be able to delineate those permissions and yes, that is very possible.
You probably want to make what I made look better, so that mine's rudimentary at best, right? So that was the question I was going to ask, so thank you for asking that. Could we get a copy of the slideshow it was not linked to this, but I'd love to go back in and explore those other websites.
Yes, certainly. We'll get it shared with you very soon.
At the risk of piling on, I don't think we can overestimate the value of getting Leslie's bandwidth on higher value stuff. And I know, you know, in the subgroup meeting, we talked about Leslie's baby going to daycare. But it really is, you know, it's been such a work of love for so long. But I think we see these other ways that specifically we take one person and we free them up to actually unleash their superpowers on the district. And to me, that's very exciting. But then when I was sitting here thinking about it, I was like, it's also exciting to think that Leslie can take time off too. So I think there's a staff wellness element as well as like really getting the most out of our talented staff. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this not only increases the brand and, you know, when people go to our website, they go, wow, this is, you know, this is great stuff. As well as then being able to boost all the other communications goals that we have and the needs that we have that Dr. Glickman talked about with someone who's already here and already has those talents and just needs, you know, some time to be able to contribute them even more. So enthusiastic supporter over here, in case you don't figure that out.
Thank you. The only thing I have is just a clarifying dollar sign going in my head to make sure that I have the right information and maybe everybody else does too. So the initial cost is $110,000 split over 5 years of $22,000 payments a year. And then you estimate that there might be some cost savings in that depending on how we work some other things. And then after that, you're thinking of maybe between $5,000 and $6,000 a year to continue the site with our control and everything else.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure because at one point I saw 110,000, I was like, oh, I don't remember that coming up at a budget meeting, but, so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page of how this would work for the district.
And in fact, the 22 is in this year's budget.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we budgeted 30,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, that's what I wanted. I just wanted to make sure I had all those up here. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, wait.
You know what, I'm wondering if it's possible to engage a volunteer graphic designer. We've got several, I can think of a few in our community that have done work for Foundation 46 and other places. I'm wondering if that would be another way to reduce costs. So just another thought.
Definitely. Thank you.
Okay, takes care of that. And then we're up to the fiscal year 21 levy timeline.
The school district's ability to process and obtain property tax revenue is prescribed by legislation and board policy 4:10. In order to comply with the governing rules, a specific timeline is presented each year for use in the process. The proposed 2020 levy timeline is attached for the board review and discussion this evening. We are also including a preliminary estimate using the 1.4 December 2020 CPI, which is 1.4 plus an estimate for new property or new construction. This we estimate to be approximately $1 million, which equates to between 0.2 and 0.16 basis points in the levy projection. Do you have any questions about the estimate or the timeline?
Same time we've been following for the last couple centuries. Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, as we discussed earlier, I mentioned earlier, we did have a board resignation of Michelle Anderson, so this is a discussion of the process for the seating of the new board member. As we were talking with Sue, she kind of laid out what has to happen. We have until the end of October to seat a new board member, which means getting resumes, interviewing them, making a decision, and placing them on the board. Our board meeting is the 22nd, or the 20th of October. That's our next board meeting, or the second board meeting in there. So we're gonna have it posted on the website and out there in the public that we are looking for resumes and collecting resumes for new board members starting tomorrow. It should be out there tomorrow. So if you do have people that are out that you feel would be a good fit for the board and would like to have them put in a resume, please reach out to them. Dr. Glickman mentioned a couple that were on our strategic planning that were really engaged that we probably should reach out to that might show some interest in joining the board. If I remember right, they serve a 2-year term, and then they have to as Tamika had to go rerun again in 2 years, and then 2 more years after that, because then it becomes a 4-year term after that. So they'll have to run a couple of times if they want to stay on the board. I'm trying to get my calendar up here, but give me 1 second. So I talked to Sue, and if it's okay with the board, about giving 2 weeks for resumes to come in, which then would give us enough time to compile them and then have board interviews the week before the board meeting on the 20th. So 2 weeks would be, they'd be back by the 6th, correct? Back by the 6th. Give Sue time to compile them and get them to us to review, and then we could have a special board meeting the week of the 11th through the 15th. So we need to check our calendars to see what days we're available for the 11th through the 15th, the 15th. The only one I know I cannot do is the 13th.
I think isn't that the Lake Division
Wednesday?
dinner on the 13th? I'm only available on the 11th and 12th.
Okay. Is that Columbus Day?
Indigenous Peoples Day, yeah.
So,
I'm out of town on the 14th and 15th.
okay. So maybe we can put a survey, I guess, for the 11th and 12th, because we already know that's, a couple of us can make that. What's that?
Earlier in the week is better for me.
Okay. Can anybody not do the 11th or 12th?
So are you wondering if we would, because we are closed on the 11th.
Okay, so,
So it kind of looks like the 12th.
Yeah, the 12th is free for me, the 11th will just depend on the time.
okay. Is everybody good with, say, the 12th?
Yeah, I'm fine with the 12th.
Would that work for you? Jason's thumbs up? Okay, so we'll do our interviews on the 12th. We'll do them, may have to use the 308 room again, based on instead of doing the office. That way we can spread out a little bit.
The space in here, 309?
309,
Yeah,
sorry.
309.
We can use the 309 room.
I will have to check the
Calendar?
but
Okay.
I'm
We'll
guessing
find
we
a
don't have
space.
anyone in 309 that night, so
We'll
it
find a
should be
space,
fine.
because that way we can spread out and also
Yeah.
have the candidates come
Yeah,
in and
exactly.
do our interviews.
Yep.
So, and then we'll need to make a decision, and then we'll seat the next board meeting at the 20th. Sound good?
Did you say a time?
Huh?
Did you say a time?
I didn't.
Okay.
I figure 6:30, well, it depends on how many candidates we get too, because
If we get more candidates, we could,
may have to add.
may have to start earlier, well, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's going to also depend on how many candidates we get, so. We may have to pick a second day to do a second group, depending on how many we get, but, because I think last time we took about 20 minutes per candidate, roughly, so we don't want it too long of a night, because the guy at the end at 10:30 at night gets the short end of the stick, because by that time, Steven's asleep, so. So, all right, so tentatively, that's the schedule, so you got all that? Okay, bonus.
Jim, can I jump in just as a thought, maybe to add to the survey? I'm wondering if we could think about our board and the skill sets that we bring, and maybe instead of, we had a number of candidates last time, so maybe think about where our strengths are as a board, where our deficiencies are a board in terms of skill. And then we can extend invitations really intentionally to bring someone in who brings some additional knowledge that we don't have right now. Is it?
Well, we're not extending any invitation. I mean, we can reach out to people that we think would be interested, but we're not extending invitations to individual people because it's open to anybody in the district that wants to be able to run. So while we may know people that are on this, that participated in the strategic planning, to ask them to come in and put in an interview, we can't stop anybody from putting in an invitation or an interview or a resume, I mean.
So my intent wasn't to stop anyone. It was more, I think each of us, if I understand correctly, would reach out to people we think would be good board members. And so that's the invitation I'm talking about. Maybe I'm not hearing you correctly, but
Okay.
I think it might be a good idea for us to intentionally invite people to apply who bring a skill that we don't currently have, or to strengthen a skill that we do have that we want more strengthening.
Okay.
But is it possible to add a question like that to the survey so that each of us could,
Well, I think we don't have a survey anymore because we agreed on the
because
12th.
we have a date?
Yeah. We agreed on a night. That's what the survey was going to be, was agreed on a night.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can
no, I
always-
understand.
You can always internally do that for anybody you want to invite to put in a resume. And we all know where our strengths are as far as board members currently. So, as you think methodically through that, you can invite those that would be of interest to, that you would think would be a good fit and strengthen or areas of our need.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm sorry, I know you're not asking me, but
Sure we
thinking
are.
about what you just said, Christine, I'm just wondering if that might just be a lens that the board might want to use when you're reviewing your candidates, exactly, when you're, after you've spoken with your candidates, to talk about who might be filling a skill hole on the board. So you could maybe still use that thinking.
I think that would be useful for us to speak in one voice too and identify where, I know I have my opinions about what our strengths and weaknesses are, but I don't know how those integrate with everyone else's. So it's just an idea, but a lens would be another use as well.
Okay.
Mr. Weedman, I don't know if our self-evaluation meeting tomorrow will lend itself to starting to tease out some of that information in advance for Mrs. Miller, but, certainly if we can kind of have that as part of our thinking going through that process tomorrow, that may, kind of aid us in the longer term.
We're looking at each other because as we spoke with Laura Martinez, who's doing the board workshop with us tomorrow, I can't remember what the context was, but I remember she was very firm about kind of what happens at that, at the workshop. So I don't know if there will be flexibility for that that kind of conversation. And I think part of that too had to do with, just being really attentive to the Open Meetings Act to make sure that what the board said they were going to talk about at that meeting is what's talked about at the meeting. I think that's what it was about. But perhaps this is something that could be introduced in some way. Don't know.
Okay. Topics for future agenda items.
You want me to start?
Sure.
Okay, well, here's the context. Tonight was a relatively long meeting, not terribly long meeting. Last time was a terribly long meeting. At this time, for October 6th, I am only aware of one agenda item, which is the action item for the website refresh that Mr. Vipon just talked about. So that's what I'm aware of that we need to do on October 6th. And then on October 20th, seating a new board member. Not to say that there won't be things that come up between now and then, but I wanted you to know that.
Do we want to add the Sustainability Advisory Committee to the next agenda so I can report back to you?
I see nodding heads.
Okay.
So was that like a new business discussion?
Yep.
Is that what you're thinking? Okay.
And then just, when is Elizabeth Hennessy coming in?
November 18th, Finance Committee.
Thank you. I knew she was coming, I just couldn't remember when. I'll probably ask on the 6th too, but.
So, do I have your permission to if I hear from legislators that October might be a good
October 6th.
month for that, because we've got a little bit of bandwidth? Okay, cool.
Christy, when she comes, I think she was a sponsor for the energy bill that Illinois just passed. Can you request that she give us kind of an overview of what that is and
Absolutely.
how we fit into that? Great.
Sure will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Weedman, Mrs. Braden had brought this up in my squirrely notes, I can't remember exactly this section, but we were talking about the criteria, or you rather were talking about making sure we have criteria to prioritize, like during the WOLD and train overview, and to make sure that we're connecting learning to health and safety. So perhaps we can just start to, have a conversation about what that criteria would look like. And I'm more than happy in advance of the next meeting if you want to kind of, build out a rubric or scope something out.
And I'm wondering if Mr. Wildman, Mr. Halperin might have already even been thinking about it. So, if you guys want to start the ball rolling and invite us in, let us know. Yeah.
Yeah, probably can help.
So to that end, I think I would just ask Chris and Adam to think about that in context of other things that you're doing, and just let me know whether you want that on the October 6th agenda or the October 20th. You don't have to decide right now. I'm just saying that, right, we'll do it on the 6th if we can, but maybe it'll be the 20th, we'll see. Okay. Sure.
Okay, I think that covers, I do have one thing. I guess this will be on just it could be a public comment if you want it to be. I've noticed on the back fence around the solar panels that people have started to do some artwork, some good artwork. Is that a program that we have started for this school, or is that something that we can do other works with?
So that is part of the Girl Scouts, for them to get their badges. They have requested to be able to do stuff, and then they will send in what they're looking to do. Mr. Detweiler has approved, along with myself, as it's come in, to make sure that it kind of goes along in a pattern of some sort, so it's not just anything that's out there, but to try and make it a little more decorative than just a wooden fence.
No, and I appreciate the work that's gone out there, because the ones that I have seen from the road look pretty nice, and I assume they're the kids that were doing them, and, and I think we probably have the same opportunity maybe at Prairieview with the fence back there for the students with Prairieview. There's a fence around those, right?
That's a chain link fence.
Is it chain link? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed it, I wanted to ask about it and see if that was something that was going to continue, and I even thought maybe somewhere along if we had a local artist, but if this is for a badge project for the kids, I'd rather see it go towards the kids than anything else. So, thank you.
Any time that we get something of a Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, we really put big thought into it, and we try to utilize them and let them do whatever it helps them out.
In fact, that was one of the community's introductions to getting to know Adam, because that was one of the first things you did was we were getting those requests, and I was like, oh, talk to Mr. Halperin. And you received really wonderful accolades from the people that you worked with that way. We've had projects going on over the years at GMS, and I know actually Mr. Smith works really closely with some Eagle Scouts sometimes to get those things going. So it's been a really nice connection with the community.
It looks, I mean, in the long run, it'll look really nice, and,
Absolutely.
two thumbs up. Okay, do we have a closed session? We do not have a closed session. All right, then I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Braden.
Aye.
Okay, and before everybody leaves, there is a sheet here for everybody to sign for the budget. So we can sign it before we leave the building, so then we can give it to Chris, and he can send it on to where he needs to send it on.